The Legend stage has begun, and with that, we are ready to break down the first day of games. And it's been a bit of a wacky, a bit of a crazy day, a lot of upsets, a lot of twists and turns. And I'm joined again, of course, by Dualism. And Dualism, let's just jump straight in here. Can you give us a good or a positive that you've noticed from this first day?
I think the positive definitely for me has to be big. Most people that I could see were between them and Sprout, putting them as a 0-3 pick. The only person that I saw on Twitter saying that they would go through was Tea Time, and he must have a crystal ball because they are 2-0 up, and I think nobody saw that coming.
No, I certainly didn't see them being 2-0. I thought they might have maybe a glimmer of a chance of going through. I did find it very strange how many people put them as their 0-3 picks when there are teams in this running that I think are in a way worse position. Searson had a lights-out challenger performance as well, and it's good to see that he's carried things over a little bit. I suppose the only caveat to play a bit of devil's advocate is they did play against Sprout in the first game, and then they took down Mouse, though. That's a proper legit win because Mouse looked crazy good against Liquid on Inferno earlier on.
They did, and I mean, Frozen is having a ridiculously good tournament. He's the second best performer of the first day with a 1.53 rating, while Mouse's overall team rating is only a 1.09. So he is very much doing above and beyond what Mouse should be needing, but
yeah, it's one of those kind of situations with Big right now where I definitely do see the positives in them, but I'm not sure how they're going to factor when the best of threes come around the corner. You know, they're against Fury next, which is going to be a huge game. Obviously, it's also a bit of a grudge match because they played each other in the first game of the Challenger stage as well, where Big did get the upper hand. Now a best of three. So, going to be very curious. I think my positive for this one is going to be Cloud9, actually. And I did not think I'd be saying this because how woeful they looked in the Challenger stage. They did manage to really get themselves set in the best of threes, as I think a lot of people were expecting. But the reason I'm going to give them as my positive is because they've by far had the hardest run so far, and it's going to continue as well. They've been against FaZe and Na'Vi, two of the top teams in the world, although they haven't necessarily played that way, especially FaZe, which I'm sure we'll get back to in a moment. And now they have Heroic next. So if Cloud9 3-0 beating those three teams, I don't think anybody can argue with that run-in at all. That would be phenomenal.
yeah, and a really big thing for Cloud9 is the fact that Axile, who was, I think it's fair to say, missing at the start of Challenger stage, really stepped up, especially against Na'Vi. He was the best performing player, not just on Cloud9, but I think on the server, and I think that is something that Cloud9 really do need to get off to a good start and continue to make their run.
Oh, for sure. And with Shiro was a little bit off in their first game, but it didn't necessarily matter because, as you said, the likes of Exile, Hobbit also had some really big moments as well. But I want to give a special shout out to Nafani on Overpass, where FaZe, if we're being honest, they choked that game. They had a massive lead. T side of Overpass comes around and they get completely blitzed. It was a really strange performance. Nafani starts the game on like 3-8, having zero impact. He ends with 27 frags. The shot calling, the rotations on that CT side were perfection. They made so many good reads, so many great decisions, and I think he's a huge catalyst as to why they ended up actually taking that match and putting themselves in the best possible shape to go forward. So I suppose that's also going to segue pretty well into our bad, because I'm not sure if you agree with me, but I think FaZe have got to be in the conversation for this.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think even as a joke anyone would have expected FaZe to maybe not even drop the first game, especially considering sort of the form of the other teams, but to be 0-2, it's a bit of a worry and a bit of a situation when they now can't afford to make a mistake. They can't afford to have any slow games, and they have the longest route now to try and get to playoffs.
Definitely. And I think it's the nature in which they lost those two games. They also got blitzed by Vitality as well. I believe that was like a 16-6 scoreline in favor of Vitality, so they got completely crushed against Vitality. Vitality have looked a bit resurgent, though, to be fair to them. They're against Bad News Eagles in their first game in the eliminations, and I think most people are going to expect them to fairly convincingly win that game, but the nature of that very lackluster T side from Karrigan the nature and how they lost against Vitality, I'm looking at this FaZe squad who are minus 12 in round difference, and I'm just thinking, like, are they actually going to make it? I assume that most people, almost everybody, has them to make it through in their pick'ems, and yet right now we have FaZe 0-2 and Vitality 1-1. Na'Vi also dropped a game against Cloud9, and it's just put the pick'ems in such a strange position.
Yeah, and for FaZe, like, just thinking about it, Brokey was somebody who was middle of the table in both of FaZe's games. And I think when you have people like Sirison, when you have Cadian performing for Heroic, when you have Zywoo looking just lights out, I think that's maybe an area where if FaZe can get Brokey to maybe activate a bit more as well, it may be quite a big difference maker for them going up against teams that may have AWPers that are a little bit more switched on at the moment.
Yeah, that is a potential concern, definitely. I should also mention as well, by the way, that the graphic that we're looking at, I know it's the same for Dualism as well, hasn't fully updated yet. So obviously Outsiders and Nip did also play each other. Nip are down in the 0-2, Outsiders are 1-1. It was a fairly close game in the end, but Outsiders did just prevail in the end. Let's move across to our meh, or sort of mid of the road teams. I'm going to put Liquid in this bracket. Now, at one point, I was thinking of maybe putting them in the negatives because they did get so destroyed against Mouse. But they did bounce back, they did beat Sprout, and they've been looking a little bit shaky for me, but I don't have the confidence that I did in them when I came into this Legend stage. Yekindar being a part of the squad now for a while, how good they were looking in their previous results coming into this tournament, and now I'm very shaky with Liquid. I've got to be honest, like, I'm not really sure what to expect at this stage.
I'll be honest as well, when I first was putting together my pick'ems for this stage, I was surprised at the fact that pretty much everybody had faith in Liquid. And I know that, it comes from ESL Pro League and the fact that they had a ridiculously good run there and people have a lot of faith in Yekindar, but it did make me wonder if people were maybe overhyping Liquid and underestimating the opposition that they were going to face here, because yeah, they beat Sprout, but if Sprout is one of the most popular 0-3 picks, that is a hard thing to really celebrate and put too much weight into.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's why I'm very indifferent on them right now, because I think this next match they have against Na'Vi is going to be a real test. This is where we're going to see what Liquid have in store. Are they actually going to be a legit contender to get through at the champion stage, or are they just going to get completely massacred from Na'Vi? Na'Vi themselves were like a little bit shaky, if we're being honest. Additionally, they're kind of going in my indifferent phase as well, because against Mirage, that went multiple OTs. They had multiple map win chances, which they kind of just let go by the wayside. Their T side was incredibly shaky, and it took some vintage simple rounds for them to get themselves across the finish line. But who are you putting for your meh team in this first day?
I have Mouse, actually, because yeah, they smashed Liquid. That's great, but then they really looked a bit sort of weaker against Big, and I had really high hopes, as I mentioned before, of them in this stage. I thought that they very much should and could come out of the blocks quite fast, and it's perhaps a strong start against Liquid is actually a bit, what's the phrase, like it almost has the opposite effect of confidence, in that you're not really challenged, you're not really getting warm, and then when you're facing other teams, it might be giving them a bit more overconfidence, perhaps, because it's ending a day on a 1-1 when I think a lot of people could have easily seen them going 2-0.
Yeah, and that also puts them in a bit of an awkward spot here as well, because now they're against Vitality in the next game, who have looked really solid in their last performance against FaZe. Could have beaten RV. They could have been the 2-0, to be completely honest. I think it's a very tough game for Mouse, and one that maybe now that they've had that wake-up call, that jolt, as you mentioned before, against Big, maybe this is where we see Mouse come back to that same kind of form that saw them completely tear Liquid apart and also breathe through the Challenger stage. They looked the best team coming out of that stage as far as I'm concerned. So that's going to do it. I'm going to bring up our pick'ems, though, because I know a lot of people have been absolutely crushed when it comes to their pick'ems. Mine are on the top, Dualism's are on the bottom right now. So I was fortunate I went with Sprout. They're keeping the 0-3 dream alive, but Nip have completely backfired entirely. I said they were a gamble pick. They've kind of lived up to that name. They could even feasibly 0-3, to be completely honest. I think their 0-3 game is against Sprout, so that's going to be a very interesting one. And then for you, Dualism, I can understand your picks on Spirit and Fnatic. Unfortunately, though, it just hasn't worked out for you.
In my defense, Spirit won their first game, and they went in. I was hoping they'd match up against, I don't know, maybe an easier opponent. No, they go up against Furia. They lose 8 rounds in a row to lose that game in front of that crowd, and it's unfortunate because I think Wonderful especially looked so good in their first game on, I want to say, Ancient. It's been a long day, but yeah, unfortunately, I've been let down by Spirit and Fnatic again, but this time for very different reasons.
Yeah, you have Fnatic as your 3-0 pick, right? The challenges.
Yeah.
Listen, it happens to us all. It happens to us all. And yeah, you're right. It was in Ancient. I think is where Wonderful got a really nice 1v3 clutch with the AWP up close and personal post plant. So anyway, that's going to do it for day number 1. Do you agree or disagree with our thoughts? By all means, comment below and let us know. And we will be back again tomorrow. We'll see you there. Peace.